There's no punctuation in the Torah. There aren't even vowels. It's one of the first things the B'nai Mitzvah students learn about the text. And then they do the math in their heads. They imagine English without any periods, commas, question marks, and without any A's, E's, I's, O's, U's, and very few Y's. And usually that's the first time they have a little freak out. With no periods, how does the Torah indicate when a new section or a new parsha is beginning? Mostly the Torah uses spaces to indicate this. Sometimes the parsha begins on a new line. Other times it's a gap in the line, always wide enough that a scribe could write at least 9 letters. Think of it like a new paragraph indent in English writing. It's how every parsha begins, except this week's parsha, Parshat Vayechi. This is the only parsha that begins with no space, just one sentence that flows right from last week's parsha into this week's parsha. I'll show you. Here is where last week's parsha begins. Do you see it? It's right there. Notice that nice big space so you know where to look. And here's where this week's parsha begins. Cantor Simmons and I had a lot of fun trying to find it. Do you see it? I'm sure you've got it. It's right here. No space at all. That's called a stuma, closed or sealed. So what meaning might we make from this unique feature of this particular parsha? To figure that out, we need to look at what these verses say. Last week's parsha closed with the words, Israel thus settled in the land of Egypt in the region of Goshen. They struck roots in it and they were fruitful and multiplied greatly. That parsha ends on a hopeful note. The Jewish people are living outside the promised land, but they're doing pretty well for themselves. They're putting down roots, they're having lots of babies, they're making it work. And then this week's parsha follows immediately behind. It says, Jacob lived in the land of Egypt for 17 years. Jacob's days, the years of his life, were 147. What follows is the description of Jacob's death. The parsha begins with Jacob on his deathbed. From there, he blesses his children and grandchildren. And when he's done with that, we're told he drew his feet into the bed, and then he breathed his last breath and was gathered to his people. So we've gone from the people surviving and even thriving in Egypt to Jacob's deathbed scene. It's an abrupt turn, which is all the more reason why you'd expect a little space in the text. And here, Rashi has an interesting interpretation. He says, why is this parsha stuma? Why is it closed? Because once Jacob died, the eyes and the hearts of the Israelites were closed by the oppression of their subjugation, for it was then that the Egyptians began to subjugate them. Rashi's contention is that Jacob's death marks the beginning of the Jews' slavery in Egypt. But wait, I hear you thinking, doesn't slavery start next week when we begin the book of Exodus? Isn't Joseph still alive? Doesn't slavery come about because there's a new Pharaoh who never knew Joseph? Very good. It's something confusing about Rashi's statement. It's not clear what he means that slavery begins with the death of Jacob when it so clearly begins a generation later. Perhaps Rashi is telling us that there is a spiritual slavery that precedes the physical slavery of Exodus. When faced with Jacob's death, his descendants become trapped with hopelessness. As Rashi puts it, they close their eyes and their hearts. Their vision narrows, their empathy shrinks. And thus their options also contract. They are no longer able to imagine a way out of Egypt, even though the famine is long over. They are trapped. In time, a new Pharaoh will come along, one who does not even know Joseph, and the Jewish people he encounters will already be mired in this hopelessness. They are already captive. The enslavement is only the next step. And what is it that precedes this spiritual enslavement? A lack of space. It is only in spaciousness that hope can grow. The Israelites cannot find spaciousness, and so they cannot find hope. It's been a rough few months. Tomorrow night, when I bid adieu to 2023, it will not be a fond farewell, it will be good riddance. There has been so much anger, so much hatred, so much death these last few months, and it threatens my hope. As this year ends, I find myself craving spaciousness. And so when I am finding myself craving spaciousness, I turn to a place I often look for it. I turn to the cold, dark, empty expanses of outer space. I'd like to spend a few minutes sharing some of that spaciousness with you. And so here are some of the better headlines from 2023, some of the most amazing things we saw in the almost always hopeful human exploration of space. Our journey begins in the place where I always look when I'm in need of spaciousness, the James Webb Space Telescope. Almost exactly 2 years ago, this, humanity's most advanced tool to gaze into the far reaches of space, was launched. And it took some amazing pictures this year. We saw pictures of a baby star, an old star about to go supernova, the remains of an ancient dead star. But perhaps none is more impressive than a picture of M51, a spiral galaxy about 30 million light years away. M51 has long been a target of amateur astronomers here on Earth. In fact, when I went to a stargazing party last summer, I looked at M51. Here is the picture we took that night. That thing in the middle, that's M51. Even then it was impressive, but with the James Webb Space Telescope, we get to see it like this. But it's not just pretty. From these images, scientists are learning more about how stars are born in stellar nurseries and how they evolve over time. But let's move a little closer to home. In October of 2021, NASA sent a spacecraft out named Lucy, which is currently traveling about 93,000 kilometers per hour towards Jupiter, where it will spend its life taking pictures of some of the unique asteroids that surround the giant gas planet, which are left over from the early days of our solar system. Lucy is named for the fossil of one of our most ancient human ancestors. Lucy, the fossil, has taught us a lot about where we come from as humans. The spacecraft is called Lucy because it is designed to help us understand how our solar system came to be from these ancient asteroids that are kind of like fossils. This year, Lucy passed through the asteroid belt on her way to Jupiter, and the scientists here on Earth wanted to test her camera and navigation systems. So they took a picture of a main belt asteroid called Dinkinesh, which just happens to be the name of Earth's Lucy in the language where that fossil was found, Amharic. Scientists have long puzzled about the strange brightness fluctuations when they take pictures of this asteroid from Earth. What Lucy discovered is that Dinkinesh has a moon. It's not uncommon for an asteroid to have a moon, so this was not the shocking part. What was shocking was that its moon is unique. It's actually two rocks that are barely touching, orbiting the asteroid. This is the first time anyone has seen a contact binary moon orbiting an asteroid, and theorists are already busy trying to figure out how it could have formed, how this could be possible. If this is what Lucy can show us when she's barely looking, one wonders what she'll reveal when her real mission begins. Okay, one more cool science thing from this year. Bennu is an asteroid that scientists talk about a lot. It's only 0.5 kilometer wide, but it has a 0.6% chance of hitting the Earth. Don't worry, we've got time. It's not for at least another 2 centuries. But NASA still wants to study it, and so they sent out OSIRIS-REx to investigate it. Among the spacecraft's many goals, OSIRIS-REx was designed to capture samples from the asteroid and send them all the way back to Earth. Bennu is thought to have barely changed in the eons since it formed right around the beginning of our solar system. And so, in addition to understanding better the makeup of this potentially unfriendly asteroid, we can learn even more about the beginnings of our little cul-de-sac in the universe. In September, OSIRIS's little care package landed in the Utah desert. Scientists had hoped to collect about 60 grams of material, but they may have collected several hundred. I say may because on re-entry, the lid of the container fused shut, and they're still in the process of building a tool to safely remove it. But even so, with just a small amount of material that they've been able to remove and the asteroid dust all around the container, they've already got more than 70 grams to study. And they're already finding out interesting stuff, like that Bennu's dust is rich in water and carbon. This cosmic dirt has a lot to teach us about how life may have started on this planet, and hopefully it won't threaten life's continuation here. So why am I telling you all of this? I imagine you didn't come here tonight thinking I'd give you a scientific TED Talk. I'm telling you this because when I think about these things, I feel very small. I like to look at pictures of galaxies millions of light years away, or read about surprising twin moons circling asteroids, or realize that only a few dozen miles from here, there are scientists studying dirt that was mailed to us across 63,000 miles and formed a few billion years ago. Because they remind me how vast the universe is. And I like thinking about Lucy here on Earth and how she lived her life 3 million years ago. All of this gives me spaciousness. Here on Earth, it's been a hard year. It's been a hard few years. And when I think only about what is hard, my life feels constrained. I know something of that spiritual slavery that Jacob's children experienced, that contractedness that threatens to suffocate hope. And so I have to force myself to look and find space where my hope can grow. For me, this is in the form of space facts and feeling tiny. Not because it makes my problems and the problems of the world matter less, they matter a great deal, but because they give me new scales in which to consider those problems, new perspectives on them, and because I can marvel at the human ingenuity that can build a telescope to stare into the far reaches of space, or photograph our planetary neighbors, or capture and send home samples from incredible distances. Humans did all these things. The great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren of Lucy did all these things. And if we can do all these things, what else can we do? If we can solve the millions of problems of launching a spacecraft and sending it across the stars, what problems can't we solve? In reading up on space news, I was also reminded that 2023 is the hottest year on record, that the threats to our tiny home in this vast universe are real and present. The challenges we face are not just conflicts between people and not just political debates or international struggles, they are also global. And in order to preserve hope, we must make space. So my wish for you on this last Shabbat of 2023 is that this is a Shabbat of spaciousness. I hope that you take these restful hours of Shabbat to find your way out of the constrictiveness that strangles hope. I hope you turn to the things that give you spaciousness and vision and light. The problems we face are real. They will not go away when we put 2023 behind us. They will not disappear just because the ball dropped. But still, may 2024 be the year where we never lost hope, where we never closed our eyes or our hearts to the pain of our lives and the pain of the world. May it be the year we built bridges that united our planet. May it be the year we reached for the stars. Shabbat Shalom.